February 6, 1968. Hue City, South Vietnam. A Marine lieutenant colonel stood exposed on Laloy Street, ignoring the rifle fire cracking past him, and pointed toward a window in the provincial headquarters building 300 yards away. Behind him, a squat, six-barreled vehicle that the United States Army had refused to buy rolled forward, fired a single spotting round through that window, and the North Vietnamese soldiers behind it began running before the real guns ever fired a shot. The Marines fighting to retake southern Hue had trained for rice paddies and jungle canopy, not city blocks. They were now facing a numerically superior North Vietnamese force dug into two-story concrete buildings the French had built to survive monsoons and mortar fire alike. There was no room in these streets for 50-ton M48 Patton tanks to maneuver freely, and no way to call in air strikes this close to a city the Marines were trying to save, not destroy. What they had instead was a machine so small and strange that most of the men who fought beside it barely knew its official name. By the time southern Hue fell back into American hands, the regimental commander overseeing the entire battle would call this odd little vehicle the single most effective weapon his Marines had, more valuable gun for gun than the tanks 3 times its size. What that machine did to earn that judgment, and why the men who crewed it were almost never given credit for it, is a story the Marine Corps itself nearly let disappear. The Army had wanted nothing to do with it. What happened in the streets of Hue would prove that decision wrong in a way nobody in Washington had predicted. The vehicle was called the M50 Ontos, Greek for the thing. A name Marines joked was chosen because nobody could think of anything more dignified to call it. The Army had developed it in the early 1950s as a lightweight tank killer, small enough to be dropped by parachute, armed with 6 106 recoilless rifles bolted to the outside of its hull. Army testing found it too fragile, too cramped for its 3-man crew, and too dangerous to reload. A crew member had to climb outside in the open every time the guns ran dry. The Army canceled the order. The Marine Corps, with no comparable vehicle and no better option, bought the Army's entire rejected production run of 297 machines and put them into service in 1956. By 1968, the Ontos had never destroyed a single enemy tank. There were almost none in South Vietnam for it to fight. Marine crews had instead turned it into something its designers never intended, a mobile anti-personnel weapon, capable of putting 6 simultaneous rounds of high explosive or thousands of steel fléchettes into a single target at nearly point-blank range. It found its real purpose in a role nobody had planned for, clearing enemy soldiers out of masonry buildings, one wall at a time. That was exactly the war the Marines found themselves fighting when the North Vietnamese Army launched the Tet Offensive on January 30th, 1968, and seized most of the ancient imperial capital of Hue. 2 NVA regiments held the city, the 6th inside the fortified citadel on the north bank of the Perfume River, the 4th holding the modern administrative district on the south side. Marine units were fed into the fighting piecemeal in the first days, one company at a time, and took heavy losses before anyone in command understood how many enemy soldiers were actually inside the city. Lieutenant Colonel Ernie Cheatham, commanding the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, had already lost 2 of his companies to that piecemeal reinforcement before he was ordered into the city himself. Cheatham was 30, a former professional football player who had put a brief NFL career with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Colts on hold to become a Marine officer. Before leaving Phu Bai for Hue on February 3rd, he did something few battalion commanders in Vietnam had needed to do. He pulled the Marine Corps manual on urban combat out of a footlocker, read it, then loaded a convoy with bazookas, 106 recoilless rifles mounted on jeeps, C4 explosive, flamethrowers, and tear gas. His regimental commander, Colonel Stanley Hughes, gave him almost no intelligence and one blunt order: get up there and get moving, because nobody yet knew how many North Vietnamese were actually holding the city. Cheatham's battalion reached the MACV compound on the south side of the river by early afternoon on February 3rd. The next day, advancing toward the fortified Treasury building and post office complex, his Marines walked directly into concealed automatic weapons fire from well-prepared North Vietnamese positions. The advance stopped cold. For 2 days, Marines tried crossing open streets toward the Treasury complex and paid for every yard in casualties. Small arms alone could not dig a dug-in enemy out of reinforced concrete built to outlast typhoons. On February 6th, Cheatham changed the terms of the fight. Organizing an assault on the provincial headquarters building, he moved personally to an exposed position on the Loy Street to locate the sources of enemy fire, ignoring the rounds passing around him, and called an Ontos forward. The vehicle's crew fired a single .50 caliber spotting round, designed to mark a target with a visible puff of white smoke before the main guns fired. North Vietnamese soldiers in the building began abandoning their positions the instant that spotting round hit the wall, before a single 106 Michel had actually been fired. Then the Ontos fired for real, 6 recoilless rifles in rapid succession, more explosive force delivered in seconds than most infantry weapons could produce in an hour. Marine accounts from the block-by-block fighting described 4-meter sections of masonry wall simply ceasing to exist. What Cheatham built out of that moment became the tactic that broke the stalemate in southern Hue. Instead of crossing streets the North Vietnamese had turned into kill zones, Marines began advancing through buildings by blasting holes in the common walls between them, moving room to room, structure to structure, without ever stepping into the open. Tanks and Ontos worked in pairs, killer teams, the Ontos providing rapid, close-range demolition and suppressive fire, while the tank's heavier armor absorbed the recoilless rifle rounds and rocket-propelled grenades the North Vietnamese fired back. It was not a tactic from any manual Cheatham had read in that footlocker. His Marines built it in the street, building by building over 4 days. The cost was real, and the channel does not pretend otherwise. On February 7th, an Ontos from a sister battalion took a direct hit from a North Vietnamese B-40 rocket and killed its driver, a reminder that a vehicle with less armor than a World War I tank had no real protection against a determined enemy at close range. Every time the guns ran dry, a crew member had to climb outside, into the open, under fire to reload by hand. Marines who served on Ontos crews did some of the most exposed work of the entire battle, and did it again and again, for as long as the fighting for southern Hue continued. By February 10th, the southern half of the city was back in American hands, 4 days of building-to-building combat once Cheatham's tactics took hold, a fraction of the time anyone had projected when the advance stalled at the Treasury complex. The fight for the citadel across the river would grind on for weeks longer, but the model Cheatham's battalion had built became the template the rest of the Marine units in Hue adopted for the remainder of the battle. When the month-long fight for Hue finally ended in early March, the Marine Corps had lost 142 men killed and hundreds more wounded retaking the city. North Vietnamese and Viet Cong losses were estimated in the thousands. Colonel Stanley Hughes, who had sent Cheatham into the fight with almost no intelligence, later said that of every weapon system available to his regiment during the battle, tanks, artillery, air support, none had proven more valuable than the Ontos and its 6 recoilless rifles. North Vietnamese accounts gathered from the fighting in southern Hue described something specific about the Ontos that separated it from every other American weapon they faced. It did not need to fire to be effective. Survivors of the building-clearing assaults recalled that the appearance of the spotting round's puff of white smoke on a wall was treated as an evacuation order, because whatever followed in the next several seconds could not be survived by staying. An enemy force that had planned to hold fortified positions for weeks found itself abandoning some of them within minutes of an Ontos simply rolling into view. It was not the 6 recoilless rifles that broke their discipline first. It was the .50 caliber spotting round that promised them. If you served on an Ontos crew, or your father or grandfather did, the Marine Corps kept remarkably thin records on the men who actually manned these vehicles through Hue. Drop a comment below. These men spent the battle climbing outside their own armor to reload by hand, while the fighting was still going on around them, and most of them have never had their names attached to what that vehicle did in that city. The Ontos itself did not last much longer in American service. It was already an aging, hard-to-maintain platform by 1968, kept running on cannibalized parts, and the Marine Corps retired the last of them from Vietnam by 1969. It never received a proper replacement, and it never received the recognition given to the tanks it fought beside. Ernie Cheatham was awarded the Navy Cross for his actions in Hue, and went on to a long Marine Corps career: Colonel, Brigadier General, Major General, and finally Lieutenant General before his retirement in 1988. He was seriously considered for Commandant of the Marine Corps in 1987. He died in 2014, remembered by the Pro Football Hall of Fame as the highest-ranking American service member ever to play in the NFL, and remembered by the Marines of Hue as the officer who read a field manual under fire and rewrote how his battalion fought a city. The tanks got the photographs. The Ontos got the enemy to run before it ever pulled the trigger. That is not a footnote. In the streets of Hue in February of 1968, it was the difference between a stalemate and a city retaken.